Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Let me take you to domestic issues now, Jason, because it's been quite a week on the 2020 front. What do you think in terms of the policies that you're hearing on the left versus what the president is trying to do? Do Americans understand what's at stake?
I think so. I think they see a president opening up markets. This Japan deal, I cannot stress how big that will be in the heartland. At the same time, they hear the Democrats talking about a Green New Deal and, you know, Bernie Sanders and alike talking about a $16 trillion over 10 years, $16 trillion in new spending to try to reconfigure the entire energy sector, cows, cattle, you name it. They want to get rid of every bit of fossil fuels, and that has bled over to Elizabeth Warren, to, I mean, all the leading candidates out there, and you have a blundering Joe Biden. I think the president is stronger politically than he's ever been.
Well, I mean, Joe Biden keeps making gaffes, you're right, but I think one important point to make is the fact that the media has been basically taking a side. And they've taken the side of the left. And that's one reason that I believe China saw the media beating up on President Trump over these last 2 years as everybody was in this collusion delusion for 2 years. While, you know, John Brennan was on MSNBC saying that the president was treasonous. No wonder the Chinese walked away and said, you know what, we're going to renege. I'm not going to put into law that it's unlawful to steal intellectual property. Why would I? We're going to be done with this guy in about a year. That's because of the media's coverage. And we're going to talk with Carter Page coming up in a little while. He, of course, is at the center of all of this. I got to ask you your take on that, because Carter Page is a former Trump foreign policy advisor. He's an expert on these issues. And, of course, he was a government informant, which he'll explain to us. And the government actually turned against him. Your thoughts on what we learned this weekend? That, in fact, Andrew McCabe, who was the deputy director at the FBI, he is currently under investigation by William Barr, by John Durham, and he's been referred for criminal charges by the Inspector General. He just got a job as a commentator on TV on another channel.
It hasn't slowed down CNN. I mean, this is a person, Mr. McCabe, who did something that almost no other federal employee has ever done, and that is he actually got fired for cause. And that is, I mean, to then go and be a commentator on CNN, I mean, it shows up in the airports, but other than that, I think a lot of people do watch it internationally, and I do think the Chinese and others in the foreign policy world look at that, and they didn't think Donald Trump was going to survive his first term, but not only did he survive, he's got wiped clean, he's stronger politically than he's ever been. And I think Carter Page, I mean, this was a person at great distance from the Trump campaign. Yes, he was associated, but it wasn't like he was core of the team. And I do have to note that the FISA applications were to go after Carter Page. He's the one person they didn't charge with anything after all of this.
He has no charges. He's walking around a free man, yet he was wiretapped for over a year. But let's not forget, I mean, when you wiretap one individual, it's not just necessarily hearing that individual's conversation with everybody in his life. Yep. It's hearing everything he's doing. So not only were they, think about that, he was on a committee for foreign policy advice for then candidate Trump, and he's having conversations with colleagues about where President Trump wants to take foreign policy. That's what they were listening in on. They wanted a microphone in the Trump campaign.
They did, and the story after Labor Day becomes the genesis, the origin. That why did they? How did they do this? I know you've had John Ratcliffe on this program many times, and John Ratcliffe has actually read the unredacted versions of this, where the top of the application says verified, and it wasn't verified.
And that is why, because John Ratcliffe.
There is a.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Because John Ratcliffe has been my regular guest for the last 2.5 years, he educated our viewers. It was no surprise to the viewers of Sunday Morning Futures that there was no collusion. There was no surprise that President Trump was framed. My viewers knew it, thanks to people like you, John Ratcliffe, Devin Nunes.
It is Monday, the 26th of August of 2019. And you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays. Yes, we've been in Biarritz, France, and we've had to chop it up and dice it up and put it into a souffle. And you're going to love it, because River City Hash Mondays is not one to be trifled with. Oh, no, not after a weekend that we get since, well, a few years ago when a certain, I don't know, orange fellow took over. Okay, well, our petulant child president has once again stepped in it, and at least, I have to say, at least when we have these big confabs, you know, like a G7, used to be a G8, you know, it could be more, it really could. But, you know, these G7s, at least the positive that can come out of it is that you get 1 million memes. I mean, we have 1 million memes to work with until next year. Oh, God. Which reminds me, Trump's talking about bringing it to the Doral. I think he wants to kill world leaders. That pool has not been inspected or even passed a health inspection in quite a few years. Eee. I suppose people don't really get in the pool, but what if they did? All right. Okay. Well, Trump thinks he needs to make money, and the Doral is really not doing very well because of the Trump brand. And the Trump brand is basically don't take care of the pool, don't put any chlorine and kill bacteria. That's their brand. Well, regardless, North Korea continues to do what it's doing, and I think now Trump is finally getting a little peeved. At least they say he is. We haven't heard him actually say anything that's peeved, but anonymous advisors have put it out there. Oh, yeah, he's pretty peeved. Yeah, we'll see it when we see it. But he still seems to be embracing and apologizing for Kim. And we have a story up here in the show. Yeah, it looks like it'll be at the chef's table, of course, because of world news. But Abe and Trump might be a little at odds over what's going on there with those short-range missiles, because short-range means, yeah, they can get to Japan. And that's where they're aiming them at, too. Eek. So, regardless, we're in Biarritz, and I got to tell you, Biarritz is very lovely. You should go there. I prefer, once again, Brittany and Normandy. It's a little colder, yeah, and it's not really surfing. A lot of windsurfing up there. And I wouldn't say there's surfing in the south of France, but at least you can lay on the beach and, mostly year-round. Quite lovely anyway. But, so they're there. And all sorts of news is coming out of that. And, of course, the rest of the world is burning up. Burning up. Amazon continues to burn. Bolsonaro, oh, God, gets back to the G7. Insulted Macron's wife by essentially pointing to his third wife. Bolsonaro's third wife was saying, my babe's better looking than his babe. In however they say it in Portuguese. Okay, pardon me. But essentially that's what he said, because he's very crude. All right. And I think Macron got a little peeved. Yeah. Because, come on. That's just such a... What's he doing? It's not like Macron is Ted Cruz. And even Ted Cruz's wife didn't deserve that from Trump. God, talk about mini-me Trumps all over the world. Oh, hey, why don't we get into what's going on here in this part of the world of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, because we are in the Bistro Cafe of this salon. And why don't we speak a little bit about what Fox News' Bartiromo, how do you say her name again? Bartiromo, there we go. And Jason Chaffetz, you know, the guy that skipped out and they got picked up by Fox. Yikes. You know, with absolutely no self-awareness, they started attacking the media. Okay. And what were they attacking the media for? In many instances about how liberal it is. Yeah, I wish it was. Jesus, we wouldn't be here if it was. But regardless, attacking the media without any semblance of self-awareness. Jason Chaffetz gets a job at Fox and he's whining about Andrew McCabe getting a job at CNN. How many? And then the wackaloon advisor that they touted as saying, oh, he's seen the unredacted fight. Oh, yeah? Prove it. And apparently that fellow who has some sort of law enforcement background and he saw the unredacted parts of FISA on Carter Page. They're going to have Carter Page as the great apologist and puts the lie to everything that it all was just a hoax. And Fox viewers lap this up. They can then say, oh, well, it's been proven. And yet, here we have the Mueller report, basically not exonerating Carter Page. Okay? And just, I don't want to go point by point, like when they wiretap you, they even hear you when you're, I don't know, doing a constitutional in the restroom. No, they don't. They're wiretapping you for specific and targeted people they're targeting. Oh, God. They're making it sound like, I guess what they mean is that Bartiromo and Chaffetz, is that Carter Page, his whole life was wiretapped instead of just, wearing a wire. Well, there you go. That's the world that they've constructed. And it's gaslighting, and all we can do is just call it gaslighting, and hey, you're not going to get away with it. And we can't let them. We have to call racism, racism. We have to call anti-Semitism, anti-Semitism. We have to call fascists, fascists. It's very simple. Very simple. In fact, we have a few stories about just that. About just that. And we kind of cleaned it up for family consumption in terms of the description of the individuals who are doing the good works of the good Germans. Actually, they're more than just good Germans. They're loyal, I don't know. Yeah, they're loyal brown shirts. That's what it gets down to. But we'll get into that in a little bit, because on the rest of the menu here, in the Bistro Cafe at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, thanks to Democratic voters, Oregon National Guard members are getting more help to afford college. We're such socialists, aren't we? Dick's Sporting Goods removed guns from their stores and just had their best earning quarter in 3 years. Yep. We'll talk a little bit about that and maybe a little bit more expansive aspect of the whole debate. And what I alluded to here just moments ago, a cadre of uber-loyal Trump dirty tricksters have an enemies list of journalists they deem hostile to the chosen one. Dirty tricksters is just a nice way of calling them rat fuckers, because really that's what they are. Self-described, I might add. After the break, we then move to the chef's table, where Trump and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe are at odds over the seriousness of North Korea's serial short-range missile launches. Short-range missiles that can hit Japan, and they just happen to aim them right there to see if they work. All right. And Macron caught Trump off guard as Iran's Zarif visits the G7 in Biarritz. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com to the rightish of the page, right there, deftly placed by superior graphic design, is our chat room link, aligned properly with the social media scroll indeed. And then, and that is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. If you would then take a gander to the leftish of the page from the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will then notice our Patreon link, and it is secure, by the way. If you would please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, those recurring dollars are stretched beyond compare, and we have much practice at it indeed. For we have been doing this for over 8 years now. We're celebrating our 8th anniversary of continuous 24/7, 365 Resistance Radio, the hardest working internet radio station that said it could, and we did. Okay, just saying. But your contributions have helped us and sustained us in doing that. And you are truly our largest contributor. And we are very thankful for your generosity. And we continue to need it. Thank you very much. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, it is so simple. Just go to @NetrootsRadio. And we thank Tom for taking care of that. I take care of @Justice Putnam, and I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime, and then get that linked up on social media for your linking ease, indeed. And if you would like to follow the show on Twitter, do so @CookbookWest, and pick up podcasts of the show by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever fine podcasts can be found mixed in with all the rest of us. Indeed, indeed, indeed. Oh, I should mention, Biarritz is considered to be, I said the south of France, and it is in the south of France, but not on the Mediterranean side, of course. It's on what's known as the Basque Coast. And it is a surfing destination. Now, I've only body surfed there. And I tried board surf, and the faces are a little different, though they can, because of the shape of that sort of bay formation, can bring in some waves, but the angle of them are different than the waves from the south that I grew up with in Southern California, because it's just the face in the face. But I body surfed there, quite warm water. It's lovely. I love Biarritz. But it's the Basque Coast, as opposed to, like Caen, which is really in the Mediterranean, where everybody thinks of the south of France. It's very beautiful there. The smell of lavender, oh my God, on a hot day. It cools you off. It really does. All right, well, let's get into our first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. And this comes out of the local television station out of Eugene, Oregon, KVAL. Members of the Oregon National Guard will be able to receive tuition assistance at Oregon Health and Science University and private institutions, in addition to community colleges and public higher education institutions under House Bill 2817, passed by the Oregon legislature and signed into law by Governor Kate Brown. They want to recall her, you know. They do. Because she was trying to get the Republicans to vote on a cap-and-trade bill, and they consider her to be a socialist lesbo, and they got to get rid of her, even though she just won re-election. That's how it works. You know, that's another story that we have touched upon a bit, is the election nullification strategy being done by maybe certain hostile foreign powers funding it, if not giving outright assistance for these recall efforts. Maybe. In spite of what Bartiromo and Chaffetz told their viewers. Yeah, we follow the money and the law. Grants provided under this section, and that was House Bill 2817, shall be awarded to a qualified student for up to 90 credit hours at a community college, or 180 credit hours at a public university, and now 180 credit hours at a qualifying private institution, or 180 credit hours at Oregon Health and Science University, according to the law. Now, public higher education institutions, as specified in the first paragraph of this report, does concern me a bit. Now, they have to be accredited. I just am afraid that we're going to get another iteration of the Heald College scam. Oh, yeah, come to our school. We'll get some government money. And you might even owe some at the end, but that's okay because we're going to guarantee that you get a job at our trade school. Yeah. How many times have they heard that before? And when I make reference to superior graphic design, it's really hard to get a job as a graphic designer. And you know how many are out there right now? Jeez. That used to be the go-to, learning experience for those that wanted to meld art with commerce. The bill helps expand, and we're back to the National Guard now. The bill helps expand on HB 4035, signed into law in 2018, which established tuition assistance to members of the Oregon National Guard to attend public universities and community college. The assistance began during the 2018-19 academic year. Now, some people might argue, well, there's only the National Guard. They're only weekend warriors, except for one thing. They get sent to battle zones in a rotation exactly like the regular Army. Fancy that. And sometimes they're 50 years old. What other Teutonic-based authoritarian system did that? Both laws require a student to be in good standing with a cumulative grade point average of 2.0 or higher. Well, all you need is a C average, which is pretty darn average, and hop to it, soldier. Hop to it. Adam Peck of Think Progress brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. In February of 2018, Ed Stack announced that his company, Dick's Sporting Goods, would voluntarily remove assault-style weapons from their inventory and raise the age to purchase any other gun to 21. The announcement came just weeks after a gunman opened fire at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, killing 17 people. One of the guns used in the shooting was purchased at a Dick's Sporting Goods. Stark's announcement was predictably met with loud protestations from defenders of gun violence. Conservatives promised boycotts. The NRA gleefully celebrated when initial sale numbers declined, and the retailer's competitors went out of their way to reiterate their support for firearms sales. But by the end of the year, Dick's attributed a sales decline of $150 million, or 1.7% of annual revenue, to the new policy. Stack continued to defend his stance and said the economic cost was absolutely worth it to the company. Late last week, though, the company came forward with a different economic picture. Sales rose 3.2% in the second quarter of 2019, outpacing the rest of the retail market by a comfortable margin, and the company's highest single-quarter sales boost in 3 years. The company's stock spiked after the earning beat. Rather than backtrack on their stance on firearms, the retailer doubled down, banishing all guns, including hunting rifles that they continued to sell after their assault-style rifle ban from nearly 20% of the retail locations. Now, the sporting goods giant stands in sharp contrast with another retail behemoth, Walmart, which has refused to remove guns from its shelves even after the deadly shooting at an El Paso, Texas location earlier this month. And that incident is far from isolated. According to the Gun Violence Archive, there have been hundreds of shootings at or in Walmart locations in just the 3 years. In fact, in this reporter's opinion, in this reporter's anecdotal experience, Walmart is sort of like a joke about having gun violence. And I live in an open carry state with a small but albeit heavily armed populace arrayed against the much larger, rational thinking people. Am I saying that open carry bullies are irrational? You don't want to get into their face when they're carrying, let's put it that way, because they'll tell you what's polite conversation and what's not. Now, Walmart company's own employees were so perturbed by the company's lack of response to the shootings that several staged a walkout. If concern over sales is the motivating factor for retailers not to act on guns, Dick's strong earnings and surging stock price should allay some of those fears. If retailers continue to do nothing, then customers are left to wonder exactly why executives are so comfortable aiding the murder of children. Vogel and Jeremy Peters of the New York Times bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A loose network of conservative operatives allied with the White House is pursuing what they say will be an aggressive operation to discredit news organizations deemed hostile to Trump by publicizing damaging information about journalists. Now, of course, I would like to make it perfectly clear that dirty tricksters, once again, is just a nice way of calling these loose network of conservative operatives allied with the White House. Dirty tricksters, they're rat fuckers. In the Roger Stone mold. Very deep-pocketed. A little different from the plumbers and the, who we think of the original dirty trickster rat fuckers back in Nixon's day. Yet, the idea of keeping an enemies list is very Nixonian. We've been fighting the Nixon removal from office since he's been removed from office. They have fought hard, tooth and nail, just as the New Deal was fought against and continues to be fought against. It's the old Soviet 70-year plan. They go for the long game, and they keep it up. So they're going to have a loose network of conservative rat fuckers. Looks like doing Oppo research on individual journalists. And whenever that journalist brings something up, they're going to say, "Oh, well, you were at a speech. You attended a speech. We have the ticket stub where somebody from the divestiture movement against Israel gave a presentation. So obviously you're biased." And they may or may not be biased. I personally don't think that divestiture is necessarily a bad thing. I know that's a double negative, but I hope that gets me out of the gates of hell. Yeah, who wants to be Twitter swarmed after that? Jeez. All right, let's get to our break, and when we get back from the break, you know that we are going to go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, Clearing the Decks. The most amazing thing about the documentary Maiden is that the events it covers took place only 30 years ago. Obviously, women have come away since then, including in male-dominated sports, as in the portrayal here, the sport of sailing. The film looks back at the 1989 all-female crew of the boat, which gives the movie its title, in the Whitbread Round-the-World race. Starting and ending in Southampton, England, with legs to Uruguay, Australia, New Zealand, and Florida, the race continued for nearly 9 months. The crew is headed by the then 27-year-old Brit, Tracy Edwards, who learned to sail at 17 after dropping out of school and bouncing around Europe working odd jobs. Despite a lack of encouragement, to put it mildly, within the sailing community, Edwards was so determined to make her dream a reality that she mortgaged her home and bought a second-hand boat. However, it wasn't until she got the backing of a well-known international political figure, whom she met by chance years earlier, that her dream became a reality. Even after the women met the entry requirements, it's hardly smooth sailing. The women had to contend with ridicule and outright misogyny from the male sports writing community, who viewed them as a novelty. That attitude changed quickly, though, when it became clear that Edwards and her crew were there to win. This doc does a superb job showing Edwards as human, looking in retrospect at some of the mistakes she made, both tactically and in her dealings with the crew. Packed with news footage in the crew's video, Maiden is a film that deserves to be seen on the big screen, where the power of the ocean and the women's Herculean effort trying to conquer it can be appreciated full scale. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60 Second Science. I'm Christine Herman. Got a minute? Some scientists want to use the DNA of indigenous people to reconstruct the human migration story. That's the history of how people spread from Africa to everywhere. But many in the indigenous community who've contributed their DNA for science feel that these types of studies are exploitative and say they don't like being left out of the conversation.
There's a long history about anthropologists and scientists going to indigenous communities, getting what they need, leaving, and never coming back.
University of Illinois anthropologist Ripon Mali.
I learned early on that was the norm in science and anthropology up until recently.
To help change that system, in 2011, Mali launched a program that provides hands-on genomics training to Native American and other indigenous scientists and lay people. It's called SING, Summer Internship for Indigenous People in Genomics.
We discuss all week about genomics and how it can be used as a tool and how it may fit or not fit with indigenous ideas and knowledge. And we have discussions on how to decolonize science. And then we do a large number of discussions about ethical, legal, and social implications.
This year's SING workshop wrapped up earlier this month. Crystal Sosi is a Navajo geneticist and one of the organizers.
SING has been influential in training the next generation of indigenous scientists so that we can ensure that science is done by us, for us, and truly benefits us.
Sosi says she's the only indigenous PhD student in science at Vanderbilt, and the SING workshop has helped her feel less isolated.
So getting that sort of sense of community from my indigenous peers who are undergoing the same sort of challenges in academia is great.
SING has trained more than 120 participants to date. In 2018, alumni and faculty published ethical guidelines for scientists on how to approach genomics research in a way that is sensitive to the interests of indigenous people and that can benefit their communities. Mali says he now approaches his work with indigenous communities as a collaboration.
I work with the communities to figure out what they want to study as well as what we want to study and basically partner with them.
In her research, Sosi studies pregnancy complications among Ojibwe women in North Dakota and how environmental factors contribute to disease among indigenous communities in South Dakota. She says partnering with indigenous people is critical.
To ensure that genomics research that involves indigenous peoples will actually benefit us, as opposed to just using us as subjects as we have in the past.
Thanks for the minute. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christine Herman.
I'm probably okay to have one more drink before I drive home. I'm probably okay. I open the window to stay alert. Probably okay. I just popped some gum in my mouth.
Step out of the car, please.
I probably made a mistake.
Probably okay isn't okay when it comes to drinking and driving. If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Hey kids and parents, it's back to school time. As you shop for school supplies and get ready for class, make sure you have emergency plans in place. Did you know that emergency preparedness plays a major role in school life? Throughout the year, schools actively prepare for natural disasters, outbreaks, and other emergency situations. Students and parents need to be aware and learn what to do during an emergency. Every family should build an emergency kit, make a family disaster plan, and be informed about events that could affect their community. Parents, take a few extra steps to help children be prepared. Make sure they know the full name, address, and phone numbers of parents or guardians. In our high-tech world of cell phones, memorizing emergency phone numbers is very important. Include a copy of this information in their backpack. Other items to keep in their backpack include water and non-perishable snacks, a pocket-sized first aid kit, a whistle to alert others for help, and a list of allergies, medical conditions, and medications. Make sure their school and teacher have a copy, too. Be familiar with different routes and ways to travel home, like walking, taking the bus, or riding home with another student who lives nearby. Establish a secret code word with your child and whoever takes them home from school to protect against an unauthorized person picking them up. This list is a great starting point to prepare your student for the upcoming school year. Customize these steps to fit your child's capabilities and needs. Ask school administrators and teachers about emergency preparedness plans so you know what steps they are taking to keep your child safe. Many schools have guidelines on how to shelter in place during natural disasters, how to secure classrooms during an emergency lockdown, and how to teach preparedness curriculum to students. Remember, emergency preparedness is important for everyone. Children who are prepared are more confident during stressful emergency situations. By following preparedness guidelines, parents, children, and school staff can improve their safety and peace of mind. For more information on school emergency preparedness, visit cdc.gov/children/schools. To learn more about disasters and emergency preparedness, follow @CDC Emergency on Twitter or visit emergency.cdc.gov. So, let's get prepared. Have a great school year.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. Several of the nation's leading historians have reflected on the reasons that the founders were unable to eliminate slavery. Bernard Bailyn, winner of the Pulitzer and Bancroft Prizes, contends that the idea of abolitionism did not exist in the era of the American Revolution. Bailyn writes, slavery was brutal and degrading. But as far as the colonists knew, slavery in one form or another had always existed. And if it was brutal and degrading, so too was much else of ordinary life at the lower levels of society. Only gradually did people come to see that slavery was a peculiarly degrading and uniquely brutalizing institution. Bailyn contends that to condemn the founders for having tolerated and perpetuated a society that rested on slavery is to expect them to have been able to transcend altogether the limitations of their own age. He points out that what is significant in the historical context of the time is not that the liberty-loving revolutionaries allowed slavery to survive, but that they, even those who profited directly from the institution, went so far in condemning it, confining it, and setting in motion the forces that would ultimately destroy it. That's all for today's podcast, 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
It started as a headline, seemingly straight out of The Onion.
I'm Baratunde Thurston from The Onion, and also, mother. You're listening to the Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
So began the front-page New York Times article about Donald Trump's demand that he be allowed to buy Greenland. The article then noted that the Greenland misadventure occurred at a particularly fraught time for President Trump, who has just recently, quote, proudly quoted a radio host declaring that Israeli Jews love him as if he were the king of Israel and the second coming of God. And then, even more concerning, that Mr. Trump accused Jews who vote for Democrats of great disloyalty. These comments, questioning the loyalty of American Jews to America, were condemned by Jewish American groups, who accused Trump of invoking anti-Semitic stereotypes. Again, Mr. Trump, you will recall, told Jewish Republicans in 2015, quote, you're not going to support me because I don't want your money. And then, following a march by neo-Nazis and white supremacists in Charlottesville, Virginia in 2017 and a counter-protest, he declared, quote, there were very fine people on both sides. As the recent nationwide upsurge in anti-Semitic incidents and the mass murders at synagogues demonstrate, anti-Semitism in America, which is part of white supremacy, is deadly serious.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1919. That was the day that Fanny Sellens and Joseph Starzaleski were murdered while standing up for workers' rights. Fanny was born in New Orleans. She married a garment worker in St. Louis. After her husband's death, she became involved in the labor movement in the garment industry in Chicago. The United Mine Workers of America recognized her organizing abilities. As a mine organizer, she worked in the Allegheny Valley in Pennsylvania. Mine operators in the area were known to be strongly opposed to union organizing. Mine managers made open threats against Fanny. Despite these threats, she stayed, and when the miners went on strike, she was there with them on the picket line. 6 weeks into the strike, she was shot and killed by company gunmen. Also murdered was a miner, Joseph Starzaleski. Fanny was just 47 years old. No one was ever convicted for the crimes. The United Mine Workers Journal reported on her death. The article declared 2 fallen picketers had been, quote, shot down in cold blood without provocation and without excuse. The article remembered Fanny as well known throughout all of the region as an angel of mercy among the families of working miners and other laboring men. A disturbing picture of Fanny's bullet-ridden body was taken at the morgue. In the picture, her head is smashed in. That picture was hung up in the union offices across Pennsylvania as a reminder of the cost of the struggle. The United Mine Workers dedicated a memorial to Sellens at her gravesite at Union Cemetery in Arnold, Pennsylvania. It has become an important site for annual Labor Day celebrations. Let us not forget those who came before us so that we may see where we are heading. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
We're draining the swamp, Donald Trump bragged in June, declaring victory over the unholy alliance of lobbyists and donors and special interests who made a living bleeding our country dry. Bravo! But wait, where did all those swamp critters go? Right into Trump's corporate cozy administration, where they continue serving the unholy alliance that's bleeding our country dry. Trump's government has consistently sided with corporations over workers, the environment, consumers, and the common good because corporate executives and lobbyists have become Trump's government. His Interior Secretary was an oil lobbyist. His Treasury chief came straight from Wall Street. His EPA honcho lobbied for big coal. His health department is headed by a drug company executive, and on down the line to undersecretaries, bureau directors, etc., etc. About the grossest example of Trump Inc. is the Education Department, headed by billionaire heiress Betsy DeVos. She's turned the department into a handmaiden for the corrupt, for-profit college industry, which has ripped off millions of students and billions of our tax dollars. DeVos has twisted law and logic to try to bail out and resurrect the Wall Street-backed for-profit educational system. Her investors first perversion of public education's mission, backed by her political patron Trump, has brought great cheer to the corporate chieftains running these scams. One of the profiteers even penned an ode to the Donald, hailing him as the savior of this sleazy industry. We've got a friend in Trump. He's lifting us out of our slump. We were down and life was rough. Too many regs. We're way too tough. After so many years, we've just had enough. But now we've got a friend in Trump. This is Jim Hightower saying, as Lily Tomlin puts it, no matter how cynical you get, it's almost impossible to keep up.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 57 degrees Fahrenheit. We're expected to be a bit warmer today, topping off about 97 to 100. Oh, I should mention that we're going to be under an excessive heat warning advisory as well. And that excessive heat is expected to go up to about 107 to 108 tomorrow. And then Wednesday, it's supposed to cool off to about 103. Can't wait for that. Boy, we'll need that cooling period after, well, getting toasted. All right, abundant sunshine, obviously. We're under sunny conditions currently. Winds are light and variable and will remain so tonight with an overnight low in the mid-60s. And then, as I said, tomorrow, our high will be about 106 to 108. Winds will be light and variable. Grass pollen is low. The air quality index is good, still at 35 parts per million. That's been that right over the weekend. And the daytime UV index remains high at 7. Barometric pressure is rising at 30.03 inches. How much higher can it go? Visibility is 10 miles, and the relative humidity is at 70%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 92 and sunny. Wow. Paris is 91 and sunny. No one goes to Paris in August. Rome is 87 and fair with a heat advisory, and you would expect that. Kiev is 85 and fair. Kabul is 81 and partly cloudy. Hong Kong is 80 and fair with an 80% chance of protests, by the way, violent ones. Tokyo is 77 and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 55 with a rain shower. San Francisco, California is 55 degrees and partly cloudy. And New York is 67 degrees Fahrenheit and mostly cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Donald Trump and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe showed their differences over the seriousness of North Korea's series of short-range missile launches on Sunday, while maintaining that they would remain in sync on the issue. Trump, who prizes his relationship with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, said the launches did not violate an agreement and were in line with what others were doing. Everybody's shooting missiles at Japan now, aren't they? He hasn't been doing nuclear testing. He's done short range. Much more standard missiles. A lot of people are testing those people, not just him. Yeah, he's not using nukes. He's only firing short range conventional weapons at Japan. Asked if he was concerned by the latest launches, Trump said, "I'm not happy about it." But again, he's not in violation of an agreement, really. Abe said the launches breached UN resolutions. Of course, Trump has no idea what a UN resolution is, and if he did, he wouldn't like it anyway because he's the chosen one. Abe said the launches breached those UN resolutions. Launches of short-range ballistic missiles on Saturday were the 7th by North Korea since Trump and Kim met at the border between the two Koreas in June. Asked if he wanted Trump to come closer to his position on the issue, Abe said, "I would like to make sure that we," meaning myself and Trump, because he said the P word, but we don't say president here when associated with the guy that's occupying the Oval Office. Right now, it's in violation of the Netroots Radio Style Manual, indeed. Well, he said Trump will always stay on the same page when it comes to North Korea. Well, you hope so. Well, Abe kind of likes it at Mar-a-Lago, though, I think. Abe said he supported the U.S.-North Korea dialogue. The launches have complicated attempts to restart talks between the U.S. and North Korea over the future of Pyongyang's nuclear weapons and ballistic missile programs.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
John Chalmers and Richard Luff of Reuters bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Iran's foreign minister paid a visit to a G7 summit in France yesterday, an unexpected twist, to a meeting already troubled by differences between Donald Trump and Western allies over a raft of issues, including Iran. A White House official sent France's invitation to Mohammed Javad Zarif for talks on the sidelines of the gathering in southwestern beachside town of Biarritz was a surprise. Zarif met his French counterpart to assess what conditions could lead to a de-escalation of tensions between Tehran and Washington, a French official said. Zarif also saw French President Emmanuel Macron during his brief stay, but the White House official said the Iranian minister did not meet with any U.S. officials before he flew out of the Biarritz airport. European leaders have struggled to calm a deepening confrontation between Iran and the United States since Trump pulled his country out of Iran's internationally brokered 2015 nuclear deal last year and reimposed sanctions on the Iranian economy. You know, like rattling sabers almost. Earlier yesterday, Trump appeared to brush aside French efforts to mediate with Iran, saying that he was happy for Paris to reach out to Tehran and he would carry on with his own initiatives. Well, after all, he is the chosen one. Macron has taken the lead in trying to diffuse tensions, fearing that a collapse of the nuclear deal could set the Middle East ablaze. You think the Amazon's going bad. There's a lot of flammable material in the Middle East, if only just for a moment. He met Zarif on Friday ahead of the G7 summit to discuss ways of easing the crisis, including reducing some U.S. sanctions or providing Iran with a compensation mechanism. However, Trump's fellow G7 leaders failed on Saturday to persuade Trump to reissue oil sanction waivers that were granted last year to some buyers, but which came to end in May, a European diplomat familiar with the discussion said. Trump, a turbulent presence at last year's G7 gathering, insisted yesterday that he was getting along well with other leaders of a group that also includes Britain, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, and Japan, and that's why he was sitting alone by himself, sulking. And that's why his wife was caught kissing Justin Trudeau on the lips in front of the whole world, with Donnie asleep nearby. The whole world. Okay, we are now at the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know that Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on, and we're going to meet up tomorrow for Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.